It's the How to Write Funny podcast. This is Scott Dickers. I'm speaking today with Matt Abramson, who turned his modest comedy background into an advertising production company startup that was instrumental in setting up the excellent TV Land comedy series Teachers. So Matt, tell us what you do.
Right now, I'm the executive producer of Cap Gun Collective. It's a production company, mostly commercial production company. And also we're involved in some content projects as well. I co-founded this 6 years ago with Alex Fendrich, a friend of mine, a Second City alum from Chicago. We started it in Chicago here with a parent company, a film editing company called the White House. And now we're in Chicago and Los Angeles.
So you basically started a production company. Did you need like equipment or anything to start that? Or
it's funny. The White House is here. It's already, from being a post-production facility, it had a lot of the brick and mortar that we needed. And with a production company, you need a little bit of equipment, but really it's a hustler's market, with your crews and stuff. You pitch jobs, you work with a director, you try to get them, and then when you get a job in, you scale up with crew and equipment, and the way you make your margins is you have like a markup on top of it. So you can actually, a production company, it sounds bigger, but it really so many times it's just a couple people in a room doing what they do.
Yeah, so this conversation is getting really businessy really fast. Normally, my realm is comedy, but I do think this is very germane and relevant because people in comedy often are entrepreneurs and they have to run their own business and manage their own affairs, and having some sort of business acumen is critical for a comedy person. So you started a business and you've been successful at it. Where did you learn how to do that, or did you not?
I did not. I'm not a business school person at all. I'll give you a little bit of my path, and I kind of picked up some tips along the way, but then continued to kind of learn as it went. I came out to Chicago when I graduated college in 2002, and was tried to jump into the improv scene. And I was working I did some stuff at Improv Olympic and was on a team there for a little bit, and did the conservatory at Second City. And I was auditioning for commercials and waiting tables and doing that. It was awesome. I got my first job. I was auditioning for a commercial, and the creatives in the room had seen some stuff I had done in improv, and we started talking. And they worked at this ad agency, and it seemed so cool. And despite, I got a degree, a liberal arts degree, whatever, but the thing that actually helped me get an official job was when we were in college, my best friend had a Mac and iMovie. And so we would make these little short films on iMovie and a Firewire, and we'd cut them. And we couldn't figure out how to edit audio, so we made them all black and white, kind of short films about things that we thought were fun. And that became my kind of portfolio that I sent to the ad agency and got a job producing. And when you're producing commercials for an ad agency, you're kind of there's checks and balances, so it's not like there's so much responsibility. But you start to I started to figure out the business a little bit of how these things work, and see how different companies function, from production companies, editorial companies. And you're like, I really got inspired seeing how some of the companies that weren't like big ad agencies, but like were just creative people who kind of started their own things. So I kind of took advantage and got to know as many people as possible, and asked a ton of questions, and through a series of events, an opportunity kind of opened up.
And what was that exactly? The opportunity to start the company?
Yeah. So I went from an agency it was weird. It was called Element 79. It was a PepsiCo agency, and I was there for a bit, and then I went up to another agency. I was an agency called Element 79. And it was a PepsiCo agency.
Now, what does that mean?
PepsiCo means, so this is so great. This is a perfect advertising story. So it means that years ago, and this is all stuff I learned from doing this. So years ago, Coca-Cola had the same ad agency as Quaker Oats. Great, who cares, right? So PepsiCo buys Quaker Oats, because under Quaker banner is Gatorade, which is this like monumental brand. And so right away, there's a conflict because Coke and Pepsi can't be at the same agency. So sure enough, they have to fire Quaker. They keep Coke, they fire Quaker, and then some other people who are high up and friends of the holding companies get asked to start this new agency that all Quaker moves all of their business there, and other PepsiCo brands. So it opens up as like a startup with like, I don't know, God knows how many clients and hundreds of millions of dollars of billings, and that was my first agency. And so I worked there and a bunch of stuff. And
Doing what exactly?
So I was an agency producer. So basically, even though like creatively, my goal was to be copywriting, coming up with ideas and writing for brands.
That's the most creative job in advertising that most creatives aspire to.
Yeah.
The actual writing of the funny ads.
Writing of the funny. So the creative team. So it's like there's an art director and a copywriter.
Right.
And the art director gives it like a look and a feel. And honestly, a lot of times those teams, even though the writer's the writer, like they come up with ideas together. So that's like, if you're a creative person and you're going to go into advertising, that's probably where you want to be.
Right.
But there's this thing now where it's called ad school. So a lot of people finish college and then they have to pay more money and they go to ad school and they learn how to like write ads and they get this portfolio, and that's how you become a creative. And that was like the last thing I wanted to do was like go back to school. When I was done with school, I wanted to just like, live in the city and experiences. And I like taking classes at Improv Olympic or Second City, but that's like, I was learning like stuff that I was interested in, and I don't know. So like I said, my portfolio was these movies that I'd make with my pals in college, and so they made me a I basically got the chance to be a production intern, which was amazing. And advertising, I feel okay saying this. A guy said this to me once, and he said, it's really hard to get in to an ad agency, but once you get in, you realize there's a lot of C students around you.
Sure.
Maybe I shouldn't have said, but the key is like, I guess the point with advertising is like, it's much harder to get in than it is to sustain overall. And that's not to say there aren't super smart people doing things, but it's really hard to get in.
Well, that's often the case with any endeavor. Once you get in the door, you find that most people aren't as hardworking or as ambitious as you are. Mm-hmm. And if you really rise to the occasion, you'll find a lot of opportunity just within those doors.
That's exactly the case.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done that they can't find anybody reliable to do or whatever, and it'll just fall to the most reliable person. If you can be that person,
yep,
you're set.
And at that point too, like, I hadn't had a job, like an official job. I was just, I was waiting tables, but it had been like maybe 2 years. I'm an antsy person. For me, I was ready to just like kill it. I wasn't ready. I was not gonna. And not only did I become very reliable, I was also like the least expensive person there.
Sure.
So I become like, I found myself as a bit of everyone liked me a lot because I cost no money and I do everything. And I came from like the new school producing of like, hey, I can pick up a camera and do stuff and not have to like call vendors and ask for favors and all that stuff.
You had the iMovie and you didn't need an Avid suite or whatever that was around,
my God.
around the time when that transition was happening.
That's exactly it. It was funny when I started there, it was like 2005, like internet ads really weren't a thing yet, so it was really like all broadcast stuff, but it was cool. And as a producer, so I wasn't one of the creative people coming up with the concept, but once a concept sells, so you have the creatives coming up with and presenting ideas to the clients and all this stuff, and then once it sells and the clients go, yeah, I want to make that, they'd bring me in, and then I'd meet with the creative people. This is what like an agency producer does. I meet with the creative people, and they tell me, here's the script, and here's the tone and references and stuff, and then I start to pull reels for directors who I think would be a good fit. And for editors and for motion graphics and for music houses, and set up that process of taking the idea on paper to connecting it with people and hearing what their creative point of view is, and then matching that up.
Where did you get the Rolodex of names for directors, motion graphics houses? Were those things you would just started to gather over time, or were?
There's this whole subworld of jobs that like people who aren't in advertising or even like a lot of creative don't even know exist. So like, I wanted to get into advertising. I wanted to be a creative person in advertising. I mean, in theory, I wanted to be, when I came to Chicago, I wanted to be at Second City hired there. Like that would have been my dream job. I'd go to main stage shows, touring company shows, etc. and be like, dude, this is like, that's what I want. If I couldn't have that, and I needed a job with like healthcare benefits and like business cards, I wanted to be a creative person in advertising. But that was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, ad agencies, they make everything. They come up with ideas and they make everything. But there's this whole world of like, what they really do is work with clients and come up with the creative ideas and then find ways to get them made. So like production companies, like production, all the vendors, all the creative services, they're either here reaching out to the agencies to let agency producers know they exist, or they're on the coasts and they have sales reps here. And they're constantly like trying to show that they're a resource, but also, show as a resource and be friendly, but also show off the talent that they represent. And kind of, and be strategic about where the directors or the editors or whoever they are could fit, what brands they could fit for, and really target that stuff. So I started my career in the agency, so I was being targeted. It's a very sweet spot to be in. You don't, it's not very entrepreneurial, but you're kind of the gatekeeper for where these, you're part of the team of where the creative ideas are going to go and get paid to get made. So everyone's extreme, like they laugh at all your jokes, like whatever.
So that's with other agency people, though. With clients, you're still having to bend over backwards for clients.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's the whole, you know what I'm saying? It's like the whole layer of how it goes. Like it's the client, their service by the agency.
There's a pecking order.
Exactly.
You were seen as the middleman between client and talent?
Yes, exactly. But
so you got some of that client treatment?
Yes, I got some of that client treatment, and as a producer, like they have people who are like who service the account people, and like I wasn't really like I was kind of on the other side, so I didn't really. We had to make things happen per client request, but then we got the nice treatment, right?
Yeah. So I don't really know much about advertising. I mean, to some extent, we all live off of advertising. Anybody in the comedy business, if you have a TV show, you're living off advertising. If you do have a publication, you're living off advertising. The only thing I can think of is maybe book publishing, which, the books are advertised, but you're not really living off advertising. You're living off these strange European companies, 5 of which own all the book publishers in America. But for the rest of us, it's all advertising. And I come from an era when advertising was a selling out. If you were really creative, you did something that had no advertising, that had no sell to it. And that world has completely changed. Yeah. And I don't know if it was the internet or whatever. I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because you came in it right when internet advertising was happening. But there was a time in the 80s and 90s when American celebrities, for example, did not do ads. Yeah. They would do ads in Japan so that no one would ever see them, and they'd make like $8 million for doing one ad for some liquor billboard or something. But now that those days are gone. Yeah. You don't get any street cred for turning down advertising. You get street cred for accepting it. And everybody's doing advertising. And there's integrated content now. So advertising is so much more part of our entertainment than it ever was before. And I think to some degree, people accept that because that's kind of the culture now. But I'm wondering what you think. Is that something that people really do accept, or do people still feel like, it's an ad, I'm not as excited about it as I would be something that's pure entertainment that's not trying to sell me anything?
That's a really good question. I think like a couple things. Like you're right. When I came into the business, like David Spade was doing Capital One ads already, and like Wilco did like a whole album with the VW, and like it was already kind of happening.
I remember that VW album. That was kind of a big sea change.
That was exactly. That was big. Yeah. The musicians started to, that was, they were all giving their music there. One word that you hear all the time now, and I always heard in advertising when I was started, but like it was always like the brand. You'd hear like that's who your client was. It was the brand. And I feel like over the last, so I guess 10 years maybe, when I've in various capacities I'm working in advertising. Now it's like being a brand is so much more than just being a product. Just the product, just Quaker Oats, just Budweiser. And I think social media has become a big part of that. I think athletes are really smarter. I think people have access to their following. I think before the internet, before social, like agents managed a lot of stuff, or people, I don't know if it's agents or managers or but not everyone was so personally accessible. And now that they are, everyone's a brand, and whether or not content, I think content is king. That's like a big ad thing. Like I hate myself for saying like a buzzword
you hear
like that.
outside of advertising in the comedy world.
Yeah.
Content is king. You hear
Content
that
is king.
all the time from producers and everything.
Totally. The script's good. The actor, he makes something good. And it's like, I remember that show I used to love. One of the first like shows brought to you by brand was Iconoclasts and then Dinner for Five. That was the John Favreau show. When he'd have 4 of his pals over for dinner, and they just talk about like movies or hanging out and writing scripts and Iconoclast was just 2 stars. And that was always like, I think Iconoclast was like brought to you by Grey Goose or something like that, but it was never integrated into the show. It wasn't stars drinking Grey Goose.
Yeah, it was more like 1940s radio.
Yeah.
Like the cigarette hour.
Yeah, right.
Without integration. And maybe the host would talk about it a bit, but it wasn't
like, it didn't mess with why you did it. You know?
And I know what you're talking about, and maybe that's the thing that's happening now that's maybe even more creepy to me, is that advertising is part of the entertainment in a way that it never used to be. For example, you mentioned like athletes and brands. So now people are an athlete, a celebrity is on Facebook, and if they like a certain product, in a normal conversation, they might say, oh, I like this product. Like I eat Quaker Oats every morning, I love them. Now, Quaker Oats is going to be on top of that, and they're going to be helping to pay for that. So now we don't know what's the difference between someone's real opinion and what they're being paid to promote.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's a guerrilla marketer on some level, especially if they're a celebrity. So it's this weird world where what's genuine?
Yeah, it's kind of, if you break it down like that, it's kind of depressing, because what is genuine? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to, I don't know how to I don't know where the line is, you know?
Yeah, well, the thing in advertising is that you always know what the point of the advertising is.
Yeah.
And that is to sell the product. Or, like you said, to promote a certain brand image that the brand wants to promote. But ultimately, that's the subtext in the creative. In comedy, the subtext can be whatever is on the creative person's mind.
Yep.
The subtext can be life is depressing, like you just said, or it can be something, a satirical message that they want to get across. How do you reckon that when you're putting together some creative for an advertising? Because I think the kind of ads that are going to really break out, that are really going to be effective, are the ones that have some subtext beyond just buy this product or believe in this brand.
Yeah.
They have something a little more genuine.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot of it is like, it's branded content, and branded content's like another buzzword that's hard to get to the bottom, but it's when brands are doing things, we shot a commercial where a kid won a day with the Stanley Cup. He won a competition. His dad was overseas in the military. He was a big hockey fan, and people got to write, and Discover Card brought him the day with the cup. So we went up to, where he lived in upstate New York, and got to know him. Alex Fenders directed it, and spent a day getting to know him, putting him on film, putting his family on film, and then, I think his name's Phil Pritchard is the guy who handles the Stanley Cup, and he came up and they had a big party, and they played a scrimmage. Just like, that was lovely. That was, because honestly, like, is Discover trying to sell Discover cards? Sure they are. But they're not talking about cashback rebates. They're just giving something great away. So to me, everyone talks about like brand transparency now. People want, I'm almost like old, like too old to almost keep, I'm almost past the point of like who the target is at this point. But if someone wants to do something nice for someone, like, I'm all in, that to me is a good use. And that was always like, I worked on Bud Light when I was at DDB for a while, and that was a big, getting to do the Super Bowl commercials was awesome. That was a huge experience for me. But the kind of payoff was, we'll make you laugh, buy a beer. It was like, you try to tell a joke, and telling a joke, from your perspective, telling a joke in 30 seconds, and it's not 30 seconds because you have like a product middle and an end logo. It's like telling a joke in 23 seconds, and then you have a button at the end. So it was like very formulaic. So it was like you have about 22 seconds, and then you have like a 2-second kicker at the end or something. And the guys who wrote those spots, I mean, they were cool guys. Like a lot of them could have been writers outside. I think legitimate comedy writers, but yeah, advertising. You get into it, you get good, you move up, you get comfortable. But whether it is making people laugh, whether it is shining a light on unknown talent yet, providing an opportunity for people, like if you can, I'm fine with that. You know what I'm saying? That makes, if it makes me feel good, like I'm all about it, and I hope the brand benefits from it because if they're actually doing something good.
Yeah, no, it's funny because if you come from that old school of, advertising is selling out, then those things are tainted. Like even if it's a good thing, it's like, well, but it's sort of sponsored by an advertiser, and advertiser's trying to get their mitts all over it. And you never know if the cart came before the horse. Did they come up with this idea, or was it a genuinely inspired idea? Another good example is Red Bull, which is great at attaching their name on exciting things like the Felix Baumgartner skydive.
That was awesome.
And all those great BMX bike tricks. I mean, they really know how to associate their brand with cool stuff.
Yeah, and like that extreme demographic,
The extreme, which used to be the Mountain Dew demographic.
You know what? It still is. I can tell you this because at the Jewel next to my house, next to our condo in Old Town, we were there last weekend, and like the Dew crew was there, and they had like a Mountain Dew truck with like extreme speakers blasting music, like with their crazy haircuts. So the Dew crew is still a thing.
Yeah.
But,
And there was a time, I think in the 90s, that really blew up where marketing was trying to co-opt culture to the point where you didn't know what was genuine culture and what was marketing.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that battle has been won by marketing. Because I think the culture is marketing now, almost everything, and you can't really get out of that.
Yes.
So having come up kind of post that era, it's interesting to hear you say that you're cool with, if it makes you feel good and there's something good behind it, like you'll take the baggage of, it's sponsored by somebody who's getting something out of it. Like what is that? That doesn't take anything away from it for you.
Right, and I think it's a transition I've actually felt during the time of being here. I think there was a little bit of a stigma maybe about what's pure and but it's like, I kind of get it. Like brands want to be relevant and cool. Like if you're gonna give back and do something good, and everyone wants to be interactive, and it's the same way. Like an athlete's a brand. They're whether they're not just saying they like a product, but what they stand for. Everyone has followers because it's all about, especially with the internet, it's all about eyeballs and who can you bring to it. So those are the commodities commodities might be the wrong word, but.
Well, no, it's an attention economy. So
right.
If you can get more attention, yes, that's an asset.
Right, and celebrity and athlete and all that stuff becomes so much more, they have so much more value. And that's why like a little bit, I will say that from going to advertising, conferences and all sorts of stuff, I do feel like the CAAs and the William Morrises of the world are starting to open up like creative advertising agencies.
Yeah, The Onion just opened one.
Yeah, The Onion just opened one. Yeah, those are some guys I used to work with. They're great guys. Onion Labs. But especially those talent agencies because, it's great. You take a couple really great creative people and a couple business people and you put it together and you start an agency and you scale up how you have to. But it's easier for I think someone who's already got all the celebrity, like a CAA, to open up an ad agency and maybe integrate that into that than it is for an opposing agency who still needs to go to the talent agency to grab their talent and attach it to their thing. It's like an extra layer of negotiation.
Yeah, it's like they don't have access to this huge asset.
Exactly. They don't have access. Yes.
Funny or Die had it really easy because Will Ferrell and Adam McKay just knew all these celebrities and they could do videos with them for nothing.
Yep.
And their whole ad integration model that they pioneered was huge.
Right, and that was new. I mean, that was pretty
Brand
epic
new.
when that happened. And it's exactly right. And it's like, it's such once you're a celebrity, once you have a following, to kind of take that bridge over to become a producer, it's like, you have the asset already. You have
Yeah, and that part of why I think marketing has won is just what you said. Everybody's a brand now. Like if you're on social media, you're promoting your stuff. Now you're an advertiser. Come see my show, or buy my comedy album, or read my book, or whatever. So now, instead of thinking of advertising as this moneyed devil who is tainting pure entertainment, all the people who are out there trying to make anything happen have become the advertiser, essentially.
Right.
So maybe that's why advertising has become more accepted now and more integrated into the culture as a whole.
Yeah.
Because we are advertising.
We are, yeah. And the internet, I mean, again, social media, internet, but it's an interesting time.
Very much so. But the funny thing is, you mentioned guys who wrote Bud Light, and I've met so many of those people who were creatives at ad agencies, even, people working at the top of their fields, who, when they have met me in the past, they've always been like, oh my God, I wish I could do what you do. Because I fucking hate what I do. I'm just writing ads all day, but I just want to write just whatever I think is funny. I don't want to have to worry about tying it to an advertiser. And people have the perception that that's what creative people do, and to a certain extent they do. Like at The Onion, or if you're writing a book, you can just write whatever you want. But the world is different now, like we were just talking about. I feel like that doesn't have as much weight as somebody who does an ad. Like if you do an ad for Bud Light and it's on the Super Bowl, 50 times more people are going to see that than are going to see your show on Comedy Central if you did a comedy show that didn't have any integrated advertising in it. But there's still this attitude. There's still this attitude among people who work in advertising, at least it's been my experience, that they still long for that purity of creative experience.
I totally agree with you. I think it's as simple as like how I used to think about it. Because I was, I'm one of those, if I got a chance to write on a comedy, I mean, that's like a dream job, At the end of the day, it was like, you're making a commercial, you're making it as good as you can be, it's a great experience, whatever. But like, you are still making the interruption for what everybody wants to see. And that's right. That's kind of the purest way I could say it. Like, as a young guy in advertising, there were always a core of us who were pals, and like kind of the creative, within the creative groups, who all aspired to also do other stuff. We didn't hate advertising at all, but we aspired to do other stuff. Web series is actually like a newer thing, but how could we'd make the funny videos for the agency parties, and we just aspired, whether it was just writing stuff on our own, and it was always cool because you knew you could trust these people, and if one of us made it, we'd all know each other and it could be great contact to have. But at the end of the day, like, it's a competitive field, and once you start to, it's funny, it's like once you start to do well, it's really hard, I don't think anyone at Comedy Central, you're going to go in and meet them and be like, I make Bud Light ads. And they're going to be like, oh, well, come on over and work for The Daily Show. It's like not what it is. And with you, specifically, I mean, you have, everybody does want your job because not because they know how hard it was to get where you got, because they see that you had the success in The Onion. And, you can say it's more pure, and it is, but like the same way that like an ad has to be sold to a client and then made and it gets tested so the people will like it and do what you want. Your audience, you had an audience that you were successful with The Onion and what you did because you understood your methodology, but the audience understood that, and you had, what I'm saying? And that's the key for success. You have to connect with people. You did it in a non-focused group, very pure, entrepreneurial way, which is the dream.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who have gone through advertising and then moved into creative work that had nothing to do with creating ads. And it's quick. There's a lot of money in advertising, so you can make a lot of money quickly.
Yeah.
And you can still parlay that to move into a non-advertising related creative job more quickly. But starting your own thing like The Onion and building it over time takes 10, 20 years. And most people don't want to spend that kind. They can envy you all they want, but nobody wants to spend that kind of time working 12-hour days for that long. Like, that's
No.
insane.
Totally, and especially at the point in their career when they've already made it in advertising, like they're not 22 anymore.
Nobody's going to back up.
Nobody's going to back up, exactly.
Live in a garage, yeah.
And even like people who start their own agencies, like generally they do that because they have a client that they can take with them, so they know that
Exactly.
bills are already getting paid. So even if it's like a little bit scrappier at the beginning, like you're not literally like walking away from everything to go into a room and be like, okay, what's my plan? You know, they kind of have an idea already.
Yeah, they still romanticize that in entertainment, the idea of, I'm going to leave my steady-paying, good job in advertising, and I'm going to do something pure, and I'm not going to make any money. I'm going to work really hard for 10 or 20 years, and then I'll have something pure. But then you know what's going to happen when you get to that 10 or 20-year point? People are going to want to be buying it and advertising with it, and you're going to be making advertising.
Right.
So why did you
Circle
go
of
through
life.
that? Because like The Onion is, has this big ad agency now, and it does integrated content now.
Yep.
So once you get a big enough following, it's going to be co-opted by advertising.
Sure.
It's too powerful and money to force for anybody to resist.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. And like, if you have, like, metrics is what it's all about. If you have eyeballs, you are value.
Exactly. So tell us about how you started the Capgun Collective agency. I don't think we got into that whole
Oh, okay. So yeah, I had worked at a couple agencies at this point, knew a lot of people. I knew this company, the White House. They were a brand that was like a really purely creative brand. And while they had Chicago offices, they were started in London, and they had offices on the coast, and they did content too. Like the managing partner here is this guy David Brixton, who's fantastic and has been a true mentor. He cut the pilot of Californication. So when the big business guy is doing that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, this is a pretty cool place.
Yeah, so they're doing production not just for advertising, but for hire.
Yeah, for hire. And they were doing, so it was post-production, but yes, absolutely. They were doing movies, they were doing everything. And I always loved the vibe of it, and it became a trend where Posthouses, because Chicago is a place where there wasn't a lot of production companies here. There's a lot of ad agencies, but the production companies were on the coast, and so you'd go out and deal with those people, and then you'd come back and edit here, or you'd do edit and finish, or telecine, color correction, audio mix. And the internet came, and the people were looking for different kind of solutions for different projects, and I had always, in the back of my mind, like when I was starting in advertising, I was still at improv, and I was always like, these two worlds, I liked the two worlds. I've always liked kind of connecting these. I didn't know how to. When I was at Element 79, which was the PepsiCo agency, one of my best friends from college came he worked there too randomly. He had a job. We all move around. And I knew Alex Fender, which was at the ETC stage, and we were pals. And he was aspiring to be a director. He'd already directed some stuff. He wanted to do more. And I saw him after a show at the Ale House one night, and we started chatting. And so Kent and I were going to shoot this thing for Cricket Wireless, and we were going to do it locally. And I introduced them. And Kent was like the copywriter on it, and we all hit it off, and we shot this job with like we cast a bunch of Second City guys, and it was actually ahead of its time. It was for Cricket Wireless. You know Cricket Wireless?
I remember that name.
So it's a pay-as-you-go phone, prepaid phone. It actually, we weren't supposed to say this, but it was the #1 phone for terrorists and drug dealers, because you didn't have a credit check, or you could just like show up, and
it's
if you
like
didn't,
a Walmart.
It was but we're like, no, we're not gonna call that out. So we had a little bit of there was a little extra budget set aside or something, and we hired Alex to do this, and Kent wrote this, and it was called, Cricket's big thing was no overages. That was their thing, you could just pay. So Kent started it, he wrote this thing about a band called the Noverages, and they were just a bunch of dudes who hung out in a garage and played music and little improv, little sketches. So we hired Alex cast all his pals, and we were gonna sell this as like branded content of like a funny little series that was the Noverages, and they'd mess around on their phones. And of course, it was great. Like, it was the most fun I'd ever had on production. We all had the best time. We tried to sell it to the client. They were like, what the hell is this? No way. But we didn't care. And we were just like, wait, that was really fun. That was awesome. So I started to work with Alex a lot, and we were always pitching side things together. And then as the world shifted and post-production houses were starting to open up production companies, we actually started to work together at a different one, and I didn't know if that was the perfect fit, and I think, through people, White House heard that, and they were looking at it, and they contacted the two of us, and we just started chatting, and we started chatting about advertising and how Alex and I work as a director-producer team, and at the time, it was a little uncommon for here, but it was how people used to work together in London, and they liked that, and we were all just kind of vibing, and we talked about, we actually wanted to do original content. And, we had this network of, I knew a bunch of creative people from the ad agencies and from improv, and Alex was really deep. He was, just coming off like one of the ETC stages, Second City, and could we do that? Could we create a model where we could try to, excel in advertising and sign talented, interesting directors and filmmakers and connect them to the ad world and do work like that, but also kind of facilitate original content projects. And they were totally on board. And the great thing is that while, Cap Gun's a brand, White House is a brand, because for the ad agencies, we're all individual, we need to have a company identity, and we represent these great directors. But for original content, we're kind of one big studio. We can produce stuff, we can edit it, we can finish it, we can do all the stuff.
So the original content is sort of seen within White House and Cap Gun as this fun extracurricular thing that everybody likes to work on? Is that kind of how it is? Kind
of, yeah. It was like, look, we're all here, so when we're not shooting ads, we're pitching, we're working on stuff, but let's also entertain this stuff. And we've worked with, we had a producer when we first started named Caitlin Parks, who since has moved to New York, but she was just a production, she knew how to make things happen. And now we have PJ Fishwick is our guy now, and these are people who are so integral to it because, getting ideas in and talking, and ideas, these people are also bringing ideas in as well. But then when it gets down to production time, these are the people who know how to, really we can put things together and be, because putting together a production when you have $1 million is not that hard, because you have a ton of money.
Money will get you what you need.
Yeah, totally. I remember finishing a Capital One spot when I was at DDB, and everyone was like, for so much money, and everyone was like, you did such a great job. I'm like, are you, that was so, we could get anything we wanted. It's not use that.
When money is no object, things are pretty easy.
Exactly. And so, but for our, web series stuff and independent pilots, it's not so easy. So it takes super scrappy people, all hands on deck, creative people we're going to partner with who we like their creative and we like the talent has to be good, but also the vibe, the energy, the all hands on deck, the total team thing. And these are people that, you want to have to be around,
And you've tapped into those creatives basically through Alex's connections at Second City and in the improv community primarily, or just people around that
God, the first thing that we shot was through Alex's contacts, people he worked with at Second City in the improv world. It was called The Venue. He directed it. It was it's a great idea. It ended up winning the Comedy Central pilot competition. So we thought, first one out the door, we're like, this is awesome, but it didn't go. TV's a crazy thing where
there's so much development.
There's so much development.
It's like them coming up with an idea is all it is. And they might spend $1 million to come up with that idea and produce it and then look at it and go, nah.
You're like, where's this all?
Crazy.
It's crazy.
The volume.
I would have loved $1 million too, but we
Yeah, no, I mean, they didn't give you $1 million.
No,
but
right.
They spent $1 million in the salaries of all the people, the development people who oversaw it, and just the system, the pipeline that they have. It costs a lot of money.
Yes, no,
all I'm saying.
100% true. But that's a project that, it was a really interesting idea, is an interesting idea of an ensemble who, they work at a bar, and it should fail. They're not great. They're just, they can't get it right. But it's connected to, part of it is a music venue where indie bands come every week and perform. And they're kind of baked into the creative of the show. And it's a way to kind of showcase band personalities, and we thought it was going to be a vehicle for that. And then people started to see it and were like, wait a second, your characters in the world is pretty good. And that was a lesson for us of hey, the band stuff works, it's great, but this is a good show. This isn't just a backdrop for bands. But that was a great experience to do that, and here's hoping something, still happens with that. But then, since then, all of our other projects, I think that we look at things from all sorts of different places. So from friends of ours in different capacities, Alex he has tons of contacts working on stuff from the improv world or people any of us know. Teachers was brought in through Matt Miller, who's another director we work with now.
Teachers, the pilot with the Katydids, who was an all-female sketch troupe or improv troupe, all of whom are named Katie or Caitlin or
Catherine. Yes, right. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great show.
Yeah, and that
Teachers.
No, thank you, and thank you. That was an amazing group, and that came in. I think Matt Miller, who I knew forever because he was a casting director when I used to be an actor.
Okay.
So we all know each other. We knew each other from way back when. He'd won a bunch of awards from his theater directing, and he actually had come to PJ, who's our producer, to be like, hey, this is the guy to get things done. And then PJ, we kind of all connected. PJ wasn't working with us at the time. He was just getting off of a show. I think he was like Mob Wives. He'd done like 3 months or something. We were like just waiting to hire this guy.
This is one of those History Channel type shows that...
I think it was like I think it wasn't. I think it was like a drama about like wives and the mob, I think. Or was it I don't know. I just know he didn't...
It was a reality show.
It was a reality show,
Some sort of reality show. I don't remember the network.
Yeah, it was a reality show. Right, sorry. Yeah. So it all kind of was like he was going to work on this and we were going to do this. Did we want to get involved? And we shot this web series and this was interesting too because a web series, we learned so much through the process of it. I mean, the girls were amazing. Matt's amazing. PJ, he shot it. I think he said it was shot at the same resolution as Prometheus. I'm just talking about overkill for a web series, but he knows everybody, and people wanted to kick in, but we shot for 3 days at a school, and we put these things out, and they were all, the web series itself were all kind of bite-sized chunks, 1 to 3 minutes. Parent-teacher conferences, things that are relatable. Yeah. Everyone, teachers, but everyone.
It was a great template for a TV series.
And I don't even know if we knew that, it just kind of, it worked. And they're a great group because they all know each other's characters so well. I think they've been the first to say they're kind of heightened versions of them, of little idiosyncrasies of themselves. So they write for each other and they know how to play it. And Matt, that was his first time he was directing film with us. And since then he's as a commercial director here, he's really taken off. He's done great. But that's been great, and that's going to be, that'll actually start airing on TV Land in January.
So TV Land picked up that pilot.
They picked up the pilot. They shot a pilot, picked it up.
That's great.
And then so for us, we're Capgun. We're kind of part of it, but in a hands-off. We're not the hands-on production entity. But it's been good to learn, and it was a great process for us. And it's nice to we feel like it's nice to have one that we worked on that went, and as we continue to develop other projects too.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's got to be a little bit of a double-edged sword because you work so hard to help something when it's starting out, but then when it gets a TV show on TV Land, they go to someplace else. They go to a bigger production place. But it sounds like you have the right attitude about it, and that is keep helping, keep putting people out there. That's going to come back to you. That's
what we hope. I mean, the fact of the matter is, too, while I think we hopefully would have done a great job. And the nice thing is that everybody, I think in an ideal world would have kept the team together. But I think it was a lot of people who were in their first kind of rodeo for everybody. And so some variables aren't going to change.
The network wants somebody more experienced to handle something.
And I mean, I've done that. I've been that person before who's like, well, these people are great, but I mean, how am I going to defend that decision? And it's like, I've unfortunately, you always want to give opportunities to new people, but you have to protect yourself too at some point. And so I think that, we've been kind of taking this a little bit of TV school. And again, it's nice to, hopefully, if we can continue to put our efforts and find other creative people and work with them, that maybe next time we'll be able to stay involved as the production entity. But I can't blame anyone. I mean, it was cool that they considered us, and I'm so exciting. And from the world of advertising, all about, they consider a bunch of people and they pick who they want, and you
you can't be upset or
No, right.
you can only be positive about, good luck with your project.
Yeah.
That's kind of the only attitude that
Yeah.
sustains.
Hopefully we can jam with you next time. Good luck with it. Right. It's like,
So I'm curious to know what things you learned during that process. You said you learned a bunch.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if you could quantify that, some of that.
yeah, I mean, we learned a little bit we learned about kind of the path of how a pilot gets made and all that. But I think some of the really interesting stuff was when you make a web series, how much character and world is key. How much do people care about the characters? Are they clearly defined? Do we understand who they are? Can we see them doing more? The talent's got to be great. I mean, teachers did great because everyone was amazing. The performances are great. And then the world, how grounded is it? What's the tone like? That's the writers, it's the director's job too. I think it's funny. There's so many more outlets now. So I don't know, and some of the digital outlets I'm super interested in. I don't know that much about like what they're buying or how, I need to do a better job of like watching content on all these different.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do know is that they're all paying rock bottom dollar to buy web series.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not,
Yeah, and there's such a glut of product
Yeah.
on the market. Every comedy team in every city, in every town,
Yeah.
has an idea and they want to produce a web series and they do it on their own. And I think oftentimes they're going to be better doing it on their own, putting it on YouTube just by themselves, getting some sort of following, and then tapping into some of these companies that will pay you a little bit to promote it a little more. Like Above Average Network is a great example.
Yeah.
But the idea is you learned a lot about like what works in a web series. That's probably what those companies are looking for. But you may be at a point now. Well, tell me, are you at a point now where you don't need those companies? Like you can find the talent and do the thing and get it out there and see how it floats.
Okay, interesting. I think we're don't need those companies is I think we're at a point now where like part of what those companies do is represent and cultivate talent. I think that my hope is, I think that we have a great network of people, and also it's so important to just do a good job and be nice, because like word of mouth is so important. That's all it takes is everyone's accessible, anyone can hit up anybody. What do you think of these guys? We try really hard to treat everyone really right and have a great reputation. And so I think that like we wouldn't go to an Above Average and be like, hey, we haven't in the past campaigned for like an actor or try to get talent from them. I feel like we have a nice slate of incoming ideas. We have to figure out who we want to partner with, what we want to invest our time and energy into. The biggest hurdle is the sales part, the distribution part. I mean, that's where talent agencies. William Morris worked with us on the last one, but that's kind of that's where like I don't think. It would be great to have more of an open playing field, although I'm sure network execs would just get sent a million things every day. So you need to have like, but there's a lot of layers. You can't just call someone up, or I can't. I'm sure some people can, but I can't call someone up and be like, hey, we have a web series, we have a show Bible, we have a sizzle reel. Can you check us out and see if you want to like do a meeting? It's like everything takes so long.
And like you said, it's so competitive.
Yeah.
This field, and there's so many people doing it.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that attention economy.
Yeah.
That if you have some celebrity where you can get some eyeballs on it, you're so far ahead of the game.
Totally.
People are still doing it, and you guys did it a little bit with teachers because those women were not known. And I still believe the internet is essentially a meritocracy, and that stuff that's good is going to find an audience, going to rise to the top. And once you do have a certain number of eyeballs, then you can approach an agency or a company and say, hey, we have X eyeballs. Like that's ultimately what they're going to be interested in. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that's like that's definitely the linear method, because it's like being focus grouped in advertising. It's like you have a product here. I think it takes it's everyone's subjective opinion. So like your show might be good, but like you might have to get it to an agent who may take the time to watch it and give it a chance, or may not. Like the buck could stop there, and then that person to that person. Like I think, you know, and like I said, I'm guilty of it too. When I'm looking at stuff, a great reel might come in, and I'm busy on. You know, it's like it's all about when you catch people, who the time is. There's so many variables that are just tough. But the other thing too is that, like in our place where we are, like we don't want to upset anyone. So like if someone tells us that they're gonna reach out to a certain person to show them an idea or a concept or a piece of produced tape, and it's taking a while, we really can't go to someone else, because what if that person said yes? I mean, we'd be burning a bridge and making a lot of people look bad. So we just check in, and kind of that's a tough one too.
Yeah.
But it's what it is. You know, we have a series now. We worked on, PJ and I met a creator of a show called Middle Americans, and it was already shot without us, but we helped kind of with some of the editorial work, tightening things up, and then trying to create a Bible and a sizzle and some of the tools. And we're in that process now. And the creator's lovely. She's got a great original point of view. But yeah, it's we're not, you know, picking up phones and like making TV deals, you know, by any means. That would be cool if we were.
Yeah, so I assume that's the goal,
Yeah.
is to do a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, we've always said it's a two-headed, it's kind of like Capcon's a two-focused thing. One is like continue to just grow the content, and then the advertising. We've brought in other people. The executive producer who runs our Los Angeles office is really like this, you know, he comes from the music video world. He's the opposite of me. So I'm this like kind of ad guy who fell into advertising and tries to be nice to people and likes comedy and is like a little bit, I don't know, you know, maybe aloof a little bit, but I kind of know what's going on. He's much more of he's a business-minded guy. He's got a great eye for talent. He's recruited a bunch of directors who, a lot of them based overseas, but like really just super interesting, talented visual storytellers out of that music video world who are now doing brand work. Or we have a Danish director who had a feature, his name is Jeppe Ron, a feature called Bridge End that really just cleaned up at Tribeca. So it's like guys who are doing interesting things, and we're connecting them into the world of advertising. So it's really the goal is to grow them both at once, if that makes sense.
Yeah. This is the most awkward backstory ever put together, because we got the beginning of how you started Capgun, then we sort of did the middle, and I don't think we have ever wrapped it up, like how it sort of formed into what it is. Like White House was putting together a production.
Oh my God!
team,
Yeah. Right. Sorry.
because they do primarily post-production.
Yeah.
And you got talking with them, and they sort of set you up in-house.
Yes,
to be your
yes.
own company. I mean, I guess that's the end of the story, right? Or is there?
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, when we tried to put it together, you know, we wanted to do commercials. We were just vibing. We had like minds, and you were asking like, how did I have the business sensibility to figure this out? I didn't, but like when you work with transparent, honest people, it's not like rocket science. You know, they really helped me, like brought me into the fold, and were like, look, this is kind of how we're thinking here. This is kind of what a layout would be. This is kind of what goals would be for a couple years. And I was like, oh wait, this is cool. Yeah, okay, cool. And they were supportive, and it's like it's just.
So they give you administrative support?
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Exactly. So we're not like hooking up. You know, they have all the amazing, from tech and support.
They have an infrastructure.
And it's just everything. So it's always a level that, like, as a client, I always loved. It was coming here was a treat.
You want to be, a client needs to feel well taken care of.
Yeah.
That's critical.
Exactly, that's crucial. So I was like, oh, these people know how to take care. So, and just to be part of this brand and the network and also, like in advertising, you know, Posthouses, those are the coolest places to hang out. That's when like you're not stressing about shooting.
It's the least stressful part of producing anything.
You're like eating lunch, kicking back.
Bowl of M&Ms on the couch.
Totally. It's like you gain so much weight every time you go into an edit. But it's so fun. So it was like, wow, I get to actually like go to work at a Posthouse. You know, we get to start this company, and they really have like, you know, a lot of places. It's hard, you know, it's hard to work for people, but they've given us the autonomy. But when they, you know, David, who you know is still the top of everything, when he kind of comes in and we work with him closely, it's never like I need, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, great. Like you grab him when you can, you need insight. It's people who operate, from like feelings and not, you know what I'm saying? So it's really a rare thing of like, just cool, just people, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like you got really lucky with this setup because you've got an amazing mentor built in, you've got an amazing infrastructure, and kind of the freedom to flourish within this realm that you've been given.
I mean, you put it much nicer than I could have. But no, it's been a treat, and it's been a treat to be able to do this in Chicago, because there aren't, you know, there's some production companies in Chicago, but we're trying to do something special and unique and original. And like, yeah, this has been, I can't imagine another setup. And yeah, there's just there's so much good stuff here, you know, in the city.
It's cool. Well, congratulations on all the success, Matt, and thanks for chatting with me.
Thanks for chatting with me.
Thanks for listening to the How to Write Funny podcast. If you like what you heard, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It'll be fun for you.